morning we're going to explore digital transformation in construction. We're here to discuss IoT. In doing so, we're going to go far and wide and address broad set of topics. Enstoa is a fully capable systems integrator. We have a range of technology and business consulting solutions from our headquarters in New York City, which is where I'm based. We service clients worldwide. I've always believed in data as a helpful decision maker, as a partner in helping us to manage by fact. It's also important to remember that we all should drive value. We put a lot of energy and passion into our work, and at Enstoa we focus on maximizing return on capital projects. Now, that's not always financial, as in the case of some government or health type of projects, but it's always a crucial factor. You know, we're all stewards in one way or another for other people's money and their investment. Data let us do our jobs more efficiently. I gave a lecture back in 2015 on IoT, and I was convinced that 2016 was going to be different, and it really wasn't very different. It feels a bit like it's stalled out, almost stillborn. And I want us to really get into this topic. When or how? Surely not if. There will be 3 takeaways. These might be the easiest 3 takeaways that you have ever had in a talk like this. Number 1, us. Number 2, all of us. And number 3, us includes me, or it includes you. We need to get our own house in order. All of us here, I believe, are in the construction industry, adjacent to supporting the construction industry. There's so much out there around the need for improvement and productivity. We work in the world's largest industry. We provide so much social value in our infrastructure projects, in all that we do. We need to get our own house in order, and it needs to be all of us. It can't be one team inside of one company or just one company. It needs to be the whole supply chain, from the banks, the financial institutions, the owners, the contractors, the engineering companies, the material manufacturers, the subcontractors, and it needs to start with individuals. I believe individuals will lead this transformation. It's not going to come from the outside by academics. It's not going to come from the strategy consulting companies. It's not going to come from hedge funds or financial services. It's going to come from us. Now, this is an Enstoa IoT device. This is a very sophisticated piece of technology. It records temperature, it records the barometer, it can detect pressure when people are going in and out of the room, it can know if the room is vacant or occupied. This particular device can't, but some can record sound. They'll know what's going on in the room. Is somebody ripping up the carpet? Are they vacuuming? Are they painting the walls? Are they drilling? It can record UV and other spectrums of light. It has a microchip. It has Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. It can send data every second, or it can send data every minute. This device costs about $3, maybe $10 for, it's not very expensive to buy hundreds or even thousands of these. It can be installed in ceilings, on walls, on equipment. In fact, we are all walking around with IoT devices as well. Anyone not have a smartphone? No one has without just a simple old analog phone. These are devices as well, communicating constantly. I was doing some research and I was wondering, like, what is the most communicative app on our phones? I think it's the weather app. You know how valuable the data is on the weather app? How many advertisers are just, where is Jordan? Which store is he in? Is he in Starbucks? Is he about to buy coffee? Serve him up an ad. Is it about to rain? These things are communicating constantly. And in getting ready for this keynote, I was with a former CTO of Enstoa. He's a very dear friend of mine. We do a lot of brainstorming until the wee hours of the night often. He's the one that put this device together for us. And I was looking at this device, staring at it, and speaking to clients and innovators and other strategists. And I said, why have we not realized the benefit of this technology? And I decided here today to broach a topic that I never have before anywhere else. Let's just take this head on. Let's really address what these inhibitors are. I'm keen to get your feedback and for you to challenge it. I started to think of data as an asset. Now I'd heard of that. I'd heard of people talking about data as an asset like land, that in 20 years, in 100 years, we will see it as an asset of such importance. I started thinking of it as water. And we can't exist without water. Water fuels sustains our bodies. It sustains our societies. Often water is wasted, like we see in this pipe. Water can be used in very simple but effective ways without a lot of technology. And water can be used with very sophisticated machines, technology to produce much more. Again, I started to think of data as an asset, almost as an asset class, if you will. One that can be wasted, one that needs to be used, it needs to be analyzed. I was doing some searching last night, and I found some of these staggering statistics from like 2011, 2012. They said 2% of the data produced is analyzed. 2%. Wow. Okay, so then I tried to get more current information, 2013 and 14, and they were saying 0.5% of the data produced is analyzed. I was like, okay, it's going the wrong direction. You don't just want to store data. It's really expensive. In other words, data should be used. And it brings us to this topic of machine learning. Machine learning is an incredibly powerful technology, as is artificial intelligence. But analytics, even analytics is powerful. A pie chart is a really useful communication tool. The thing is that these sophisticated technologies, like machine learning, they need data and big data sets. If data is sitting in little silos, it can't do very much. Coming back to that analogy of data as an asset like land, envision that if there's certain landholders, little plots of land, and there's another plot, and there's another plot, and there's another plot, but we're all just I'm keeping this to myself. We can't do much with this space. I can maybe build a shack, but I certainly can't build a house. I can't build a building. And that's where we are as an industry. Individuals hold on to data, teams hold on to data, companies hold on to data. Now, they're not wrong to do so, and that's what we want to talk about now, is that while we have data and things, and those things are connected, what about the processes? What about how they communicate? Just by the way, there's more on this, enstoa.com/data, background information. I don't know if you all have heard of a company called Flexio. Really interesting, promising startup in Silicon Valley, California, created by Google Ventures with a focus on the built environment, responding to the call to action. Well, on February 28th, Flexio shut their doors, and the CEO's quote is really powerful. He said, until the industry is ready to revolutionize its processes, relationships, and contracts, it may be too soon to offer an end-to-end data sharing solution. So this data that's sitting in silos, where there's almost a disincentive to share it, you don't want to be penalized for your transparency, right? So we kind of hold on to it. It made me think of also people that a person on their own, if left on their own, either becomes a monk or really disengaged, lonely. It just sort of like breaks down the process. So again, we need to find a way to connect these different data sources, and this means we have to take on a very big challenge, which is to rework our supply chain relationships. This is a typical and very simple org chart. We have a builder on the right, we have a designer on the left, we have subcontractors, subconsultants, and we have an owner up at the top. Each of these parties and entities is separated and connected with a range of contracts, obligations, liabilities. There is not an incentive to share data in this structure. Now, you all are probably in different, components of this. Some of you might be in an owner organization. You might work for a governmental agency. Some of you might work for a specialty subcontractor. This is another view to just show how varied these relationships and these companies are in the industry. We often, in thinking of productivity, we go over to manufacturing and we say, how did manufacturing do it? This is from the Stanford University, a interesting synopsis of how the manufacturing industry needs to change across that supply chain, that sharing data is good for the bottom line. Now, that's not natural for us, given the current state of the industry. I've just highlighted really the pertinent points there. All internal opportunities have been exhausted. This was written in 1999. I brought that forward 20 years, and I said that you could see this applied to construction in 2019. It is all about the supply chain. Blockchain is a way, the best way I believe we have today to address this. You all are hearing more and more about blockchain. First of all, it's very old. I think it was created in 1990 or 1991 by a group of researchers who wanted to protect and make immutable their research and articles. It became famous with Bitcoin several years ago, but it's not a new technology, it's not a new concept. I'm going to just explain really briefly what it is. You have a block, which you can think of as a box. Inside the box, you put content. Content might be an example. This is like an invoice I have here, a date, who it's from, what the amount is. That's the content that goes into the box. There's this thing called a hash, which says, which is unique based on the content. So that little table there would create a hash, and this block would reference the former block, and that block references the former block, and that one references the former block, and you go all the way back to what is called the Genesis block. Now, if you change the content, if that amount goes from 7 to 8, the hash changes, and the block has to reset. So as a result, this is a very easy, simple to administer technology that nearly guarantees immutability. So that chain of blocks then gets copied into various nodes. This would be 15 nodes or so that are up here, and those nodes get distributed around on different servers around the world. Each of those nodes then does a check with the other nodes to confirm that those hashes and those blocks are all in sync. And as long as 51% of these nodes recognize that they are the same, there's consensus. Upon reaching node consensus, fraud is statistically impossible. Any changes in the block in the chain triggers an alert because it's no longer in consensus. So again, blockchain is a simple, open source technology. It's not new, and I believe it is the way we can rework our contracts and our supply chain. And it's open source. I'm sure some of you have Android devices and some of you have iOS devices. Try to share with your neighbor an app from your iPhone. You can't, right? Android's closed and iPhones are closed. Or try to use Gmail as your client for Outlook. You can't do that. If we look, the technology today is all closed. Autodesk has its closed system. Oracle has their closed system. And the beauty of blockchain is that it is open source. Blockchain and open source has a perfect application in our industry, in construction. Smart contracts is one of the ways that we do that. We have these big paper contracts with very extensive terms and conditions. No one human can remember it. The lawyers really like our industry. A smart contract essentially puts the agreement between providers in code. This is a very simple example of a contract that is between a contractor and a trade. There are assets. It's in the blockchain. It's transparent to people. Once, in this case, the asset is provided, it triggers a payment. So what these technologies will allow us to do is to create a project ledger. And this is distinct from a contractor having a general ledger. A subcontractor has their general ledger. An owner has a general ledger. This is all replication of data. And anyone who's an accountant knows that, if I'm a subcontractor, what's in my general ledger probably doesn't match with my client's general ledger. This is an example of what that project ledger would look like. Just debits and credits. An owner creates a contract for 1,000 units, debit, credit. A subcontractor creates a contract for 100 units. Sorry, a contractor. A subcontractor invoices for 7 units. There's consensus along the way and immutability. So, I have the benefit here of putting out this idea and encouraging us all to pursue this as a means to address the disconnects in our supply chain. So I'm going to start to wrap up here and talk about that trust and the project ledger. Blockchain, smart contracts, they are not going to do it on their own. I firmly believe in the importance of us sharing our values as individuals, as teams, as companies, aligning along that spectrum, as well as creating this full project ledger throughout the supply chain. Our business is still done on handshakes. Behind that handshake might be a contract. It might be a smart contract. These digital handshakes can be as intimate, as personal as the in-person. These paper contracts that our lawyers produce in reams and volumes can be replaced by these smart contracts that specify the very simple if, then what. If a unit is installed, then check the quality. If the quality is confirmed, then pay the contractor. That for our industry, the way to break down the silos, the way to allow data and technology to deliver on its promise is to focus relentlessly on our supply chain relationships, using open source, using blockchain, that in doing so, there will be a new way to build, that in 10 years, the way we design, the way we commission projects, the way we fund projects, the way we build them will change. We move not just individuals, but teams of people from a disengaged state, or worse, a defensive posture, to a team that's working collaboratively together. They have trust and they have transparent technology. I talked about those 3 takeaways that I wanted you to have towards the beginning of the presentation. Us, that we are the ones that are going to make this change. We are going to put our own house in order. That it's going to be all of us. It's not going to be the owner organizations. It's not going to be the EPC. It's going to be all of us. And that it starts with individuals. You know, we need to know that it's we first who have to be comfortable with that transparency, even in our own teams, from our teams to our company, from our company to our partners. And that brings us to the end. Thank you.